Mighty Khan Academy. Hello, I'm Theodore, and welcome to the Mind Tree Exponential Podcast. Professor of Mathematics Education at Stanford Graduate School of Education, Joe Boaler, describes the mathematics instruction Americans receive as impoverished. I believe this to be a grave understatement. Like so many children, my daughter was suffering from mathematic rickets, a chronic and devastating form of educational malnutrition. This isn't because mathematics is empty calories. Rather, it's because of the horribly inefficient and ineffective traditional classroom instructional methods that schools insist on using or are often forced into using. However, the term impoverished is a nice opposite to that of enrichment. And at Mindtree X, we believe enrichment is one of the most powerful educational concepts there are. Enrichment in education is the equivalent of a wholesome diet. At least half of my daughter's daily effort in mathematics was just lugging around a too heavy textbook and then transcribing problem sets from the book to pieces of paper. None of which is a lot of mathematics. It's not mathematics doing that. It's being a transcriber, a scrivener. And an even more atrocious misallocation of resources, though. Consider the teacher who was only able to provide homework feedback several days after it was completed, long after the feedback might have done some good for the student. But this isn't the teacher's fault. It's just that for that many students, 25 in one class and maybe 5 classes, that's 100 students all turning in messy homework. How in the world can a teacher possibly grade all those? And really, they can't. The quantitative demands are just force a teacher to abandon much of the qualitative or the quality teaching they may want to do. And with that adequate yearly progress wave hanging over them, whether or not my daughter or anybody else in the classroom fully grasped the concept, there was always pressure to be moving on to the next lesson. And she was being forced to take another bite even before she had finished chewing the last. And gaps start to develop in her understanding. But the teacher knows it's not her fault and it's not the teacher's fault, so they work together and they pass her forward and they keep her moving forward as best they can. 70% maybe, if that really. But 70% means there's a 30% gap. That's a major hole in her understanding. And that's where I get the term rickets. There's a hole. You can't build on a foundation filled with holes. As these students struggle with math, first it becomes a deficiency, but soon enough it blossoms into the mass education's flower of disability. She was not learning math. Rather, she was learning to hate math as a meaningless, do-as-you're-told chore. At the whip was the only thing keeping her going. And her behavior and attitude to deal with such an environment was changing from frustration and building to anger. And finally, it was turning into a spirited dislike of school. And the long-term consequences of exposure to such a harmful learning environment are very dire to contemplate. But a general disdain for authority is very common, and a distaste for math is almost guaranteed. Now, I'm all in favor of a proper disdain for authority. It's very healthy, and perhaps it's probably the most useful thing mass education teaches students. But mathematics is such a powerful tool in the 21st century that it's tragic to see generation after generation come to hate mathematics and see it as the ideal of the Prussian model of education. that was meant to churn out loyal and tractable citizens who would learn the value of submitting to authority, of parents, teachers, church, and ultimately a king. Enter Khan Academy. Our math missions guide learners from kindergarten to calculus, using state-of-the-art adaptive technologies that identify strengths and learning gaps. KhanAcademy.org. Self-directed plus self-paced times learning by doing squared equals self-mastery. Understanding that anything was better than continuing on the path she was on, we started looking for alternatives. Along the way, we came across Khan Academy and took a shot. We signed up for a free account and entered a world of learning we had only ever dreamed about. The benefits of using Khan Academy are immediate and profound, as well as lasting and applicable. The first thing we noticed was the amazing increase in efficiencies thanks to the leveraged use of computer and online learning. Using Khan Academy, there was no need to transcribe math sets out of a heavy textbook because the work is on the computer. Though we did add a whiteboard to the top of the desk where she could work on the problems, she never transcribes the sets, just does the work. Khan's videos spend comparatively short periods of time on lecture and send the students into action as soon as possible. It turned out that 10 minutes give or take, was the right length for them to be, he says. This length of time for lecture is supported by several key educators, including Dr. John Medina, who is bold enough to declare it the 10-minute rule. But more importantly, it fits the fast-paced model of information processing that is required in a 21st century learning environment. Interestingly, keeping the video lecture short, some of the lessons are 3 minutes or less, parallels the way most people play video games. Perhaps there is some review of the instructions, but primarily, they pick up the remote and figure out how to play through the process of trial and error. This is learning by doing, and it requires a few distinct features to work. First, learning by doing requires timely feedback. In her traditional class, our daughter would do her textbook and paper homework at night, turn it in the next day, and a few days later receive not actual feedback. The teacher had given in to trying to do that because it's essentially not possible. So the work was just reviewed to see that the student actually attempted the problems. And so she received a grade of complete. At no time did she find out whether or not the work she had done was correct. At least on her unit tests, the teacher would review each question in class, but usually days after the test was taken, simply because it takes days to assess such tests properly. From 25 unique students, or 100. Sadly, feedback is a perishable commodity, and such a gap in time degrades feedback dramatically. Khan Academy's feedback is immediate. Every question, every problem, every mastery challenge provides instantaneous feedback in the same way a basketball hoop provides instantaneous feedback. The ball either goes in or not. And in Khan Academy, the answer is either correct or incorrect. In both cases, this feedback can be used as a tool for improving performance. Notably, learning by doing can often produce a high number of errors. In traditional mathematics instructions, lots of mistakes means a lot of messy pencil erasing, bad test scores, and bad grades. In Khan Academy, as in most video games, mistakes lead to learning and ultimately to success. The student can be instructed in more formal ways by Khan Academy's mission map, in which videos on the methods are presented prior to the work, or the student can dive right into solving the problems based on learning objectives alone. They can use what they already know about mathematics, those skills they have honed like a carpenter, with a belt full of well-worn but sharp tools and attempt to solve the new set of problems without being told how to do so. They can just work on it. Since there are no negative consequences for missing a problem, such as a poor grade or homework or staying after school, or even the small negative consequences of having to transcribe another problem from the textbook, the student is liberated to make lots of mistakes and to learn from them. And learning from mistakes is very powerful. It turns it into a game. It turns it into a puzzle that the student can poke at and try and figure it out. But if they get stuck and they want to go ahead and proceed, there's other ways to proceed. You can take a hint. And there's always videos attached that teach the lesson. So the student can try the problem, and if they're not getting it and they need a little more information, there's Khan's videos. He's made these videos, and you watch, and he does it on the blackboard. He teaches them very specifically to what they need. And they watch that as much or as little as they need. Maybe because they had tried it before, they're a little more familiar. And when they see the video, they're like, oh, now I get it. And they shut the video and go right back to the work. Now, a traditional math text may have a sample problem similar to the current problem being attempted. And who knows where that is in the book exactly. But this can't hardly compare to Khan Academy's ability to break down each problem the student is working on. So if they get it wrong, they take a hint. It shows them one step further on that exact problem they're working on. They don't have to shuffle through to look at the example. It's that problem, and they can take each step all the way through to the correct answer, and they can learn it that way as well, along with the video. There's just multiple ways they can get to the right answer. And thanks to the increased efficiency, such as these, students are free to crash through problem after problem, and as Joe Boaler explains, use their existing mathematics skill as real mathematicians do, by flexibly applying methods to new situations and using the hints and videos as support in the process of generating fluid intelligence. They come to understand the concepts through application and feedback, trial and error. They figure out the boundaries and the rules of mathematics through repeated encounters with tasty treats and electric fences, developing smarts just like the velociraptors in the original Jurassic Park, in a very visceral way through the meaty shock of missing that fifth and final question that would have ended a practice session after having taken a long and laborious amount of time to carefully answer each of the previous 4 questions correctly. Bringing math back, as Joe Boaler suggests, back to life, by giving students a sense of living mathematics. This is living mathematics. Now, I kind of got ahead of myself talking about the 4 questions in a row and then the 5th one. In order to master it, you have to answer all these questions in a row. So you have to get 4 in a row. And then if you make one mistake on the 5th one, you get it wrong, you have to start all over. So it can be very shocking to not get that 5th question right. And it happens instantaneously. As soon as you enter the answer, it hits you with that feedback. It either gives you a bell that you know you got it right and it celebrates, or it buzzes you and it hurts. And you're like, oh, man. What this drive does, it creates this quest for mastery and this motivation to get those 5 right. Because each block you get fills your character, or literally your person. You have a little avatar, but you get the knowledge, and these blocks build, and you get to build. And so it becomes exciting, and instead of being bummed out by missing that 5th question, when you get that 5th question right, it's a celebration. And if you go to our website, you can click and you can see what it looks like when you're celebrating doing well on math, which is not something that you might consider seeing all the time. And it shows me and my daughter working on Khan Academy out of our living room. And my wife was sitting on the couch, and without kind of letting us know that she was recording it, she just kind of turned on her phone and she acted like she was kind of watching it. But she was watching us as we were working on this mastery challenge. And it's a very interesting thing, because it's the type of mathematics that we all want our children to experience. And when they do, it changes everything. So go check out that video. It's very, very interesting. Mine.
So it would be no. Yes.
Because it's a little bit over. So that would be, yep, I think that's right.
Yes.
Oh, that was a complex problem.
Oh, Dad, I got a new badge. A challenger badge. A challenger badge. Boaler. Dad, let's do that again. Boaler.
I like filming.
Come on. That's that. I want a high five.
Whoa.
Wow.
High 10. Actually, high 15.
15.
Welcome back. Now, Khan Academy takes care of the problem creation because you don't have to create any problems or draw them out of a math book. It just pumps new questions. You could do hundreds of them. They'll just recreate new questions. Now, this can be compared to a baseball player having access to a pitching machine with an infinite supply of baseballs and, freshly minted official Major League baseballs being tossed right down the middle of the strike zone, or fresh basketballs being passed to a person practicing free throws or three-pointer, just right on the money where you're stepping into it and following through. Or recently harvested pumpkins for chunking or pie making. The work comes hard at first, but since the student is working math and not transcription and not carrying textbooks, and the problems just keep rolling out, like a muscle, the brain starts warming up and building stamina. And often, before long, a state of flow is achieved where the skills are right on the edge of their ability and you have to struggle and reach for it. And when you hit that level, productivity and engagement just skyrockets. It's just, you lose sense of time, you lose track of time. And most people never experience that sense of flow or being in the zone or being on fire in mathematics, but it can happen, and Khan Academy's mastery system helps you with that, because you can get 10 out of 10 free throws, and on Khan Academy you can get 10 out of 10 questions right, and it shows you right there, each time you make a toss, it shows you whether you're right or wrong instantaneously, just like shooting free throws, and that lets you get right in the zone. The hitter finds the groove, feeling the solid crack of a well-hit baseball after each swing. The shooter catches and fires and hears the whip of the net after each shot. The pie maker bakes in the crust to a perfect golden brown and gets to eat a just dessert. And the math student wields mathematics to deconstruct puzzles, receive energy points and badges, and most importantly, as Khan himself declares, this process restores the treasure hunt excitement to the process of learning mathematics. The quest for mastery begins. All of this compared to the student with a traditional textbook who is practicing his swing by tossing a misshapen, dog-chewed scrap of a baseball in the air half-heartedly to himself, taking a cut, but because he knows better, the better he hits it, the farther the ball's going to go and the farther he'll have to walk to collect it. Or the shooter who tosses up a brick and has to chase the ball as it rolls down the street. Or the pie maker who must use canned pumpkin. Their hearts just can't be in it. The traditional math student works 10 problems of math a night to receive that C grade just to get through the horrible distaste of this whole mathematics game. One of the greatest strengths of Khan Academy is the mastery system of assessment. Grades and standardized tests are out, and the drive toward mastery is in. Because students access learning content as needed, thanks to the adaptive software, learning is set at an individual's pace, meaning students are not moving on to a new concept until they are ready, until they have demonstrated mastery, not just answered a bunch of problems right in a row or whatever. They have to show in any given situation that they can answer it. A mastery challenge just throws random questions at them, and they have to be able to answer it correct there first. So, a simple enough concept. Mastery learning simply suggests that students should adequately comprehend a given concept before it being expected to understand a more advanced one. That's Kahn's definition of mastery, and it sounds very reasonable to me. The badges of Khan Academy reveal a lot about what a student really knows and is actually capable of accomplishing. In fact, Khan Academy badges are quickly gaining credibility as meaningful credentials, while the C grade on a traditional report card actually hides a great deal of what a student doesn't know. As Khan explains, a shaky understanding early on will lead to complete bewilderment later. A building constructed on a shaky 70% accurate foundation cannot possibly reach its full potential and is actually likely to collapse. For students across the country, this means a complete implosion of motivation and interest in learning mathematics. Using the mastery system provided for free by Khan Academy, each concept can be fully digested before the student moves on to the next, and this builds a more wholesome appreciation for and understanding of mathematics. And absent these gaps in knowledge, provides a solid foundation for later growth and more complex ideas and more complex mathematics. Students are not simply memorizing methods, but learning how to apply these concepts, how to use math as tools to solve these puzzles. I hope to help students see the connections, the progression between one lesson and the next, to hone their intuition so that mere information absorbed one concept at a time could develop into true mastery of a subject. Kahn says, the problem sequences often require a student to get 5 problems of a particular kind correct in a row, as a means of having practiced the content successfully. Sometimes this can add up. You could attempt 30 questions without actually getting 5 in a row correct, and after you get those first 4, the 5th one you pay very close attention to, and you make sure you really get it, which is so perfect for learning the concept. And then there is the mastery challenge that collects all the concepts that you have practiced into 5 or 6 question test, essentially. It's a do or die test. If the student misses a question in a mastery challenge, that'll remove their practice, and it'll be placed on a needs practice list, which means they'll have to go back and re-answer 5 in a row again. So the mastery challenge really, make you focus, but they don't put too many questions in the mastery challenge, so that way they're not wearing the child out. The student can only concentrate hard on mathematics for a certain amount of time. So these mastery challenges, they really force you to step up and perform as if you had been practicing and now you have a game. It's game time. So in each school year, there are a set number of skills, and throughout the year, the student has a very clear path to follow. Kahn's system sets it up. These are all the 100 skills you need, and the student doesn't need any teacher to help them figure it out. It's totally self-driven. The clarity of purpose and direction, the lack of fear of failure, and the ease of receiving help, if they do need it, empowers students to take charge, providing the motivation and the power to regulate and improve their own learning. Liberation, or as it is commonly known in academic settings, self-directed learning. As the year comes to a close, the student may work furiously to finish the mission, not pursued by fear or anxiety over a failing grade, but drawn forward by the intrinsic motivation to complete 100% of the cycle. Khan Academy turns math into a very orderly business, and students can move forward without any gaps in their skill set. Instead of a daily chore, lugging the book, transcribing the questions, under the whip, the use of this wonderful, free mathematics learning system turns math education into a daily exercise in problem solving, not too far removed from the puzzle-solving Eden Sarah Flannery enjoyed as a child which she described as more important in her own mathematical development than all the years of math that she was taught in classes. In such an environment, the completion of each puzzle does not cause it to disappear as homework done on paper disappears into the void after it is completed, or content memorized for a test is dumped after the test is taken. Rather, each successful problem solved is a brick in the construction of a mental structure of lasting strength and majestic grandeur. Flipped learning. Teacher as a coach. One of the key elements of the Mindtree Exponential Micro School is the idea of using leverage to be more productive. Like the former lot of a house servant who spent the vast majority of their time heating and carrying water for laundry, the math teacher's days of spending a disproportionate amount of resources grading papers are at an end. Khan Academy is like the automated loading docks in Germany, with a vast majority of the work being completed automatically through the leveraged use of adaptive machines. As mentioned previously, Khan Academy takes care of all the problem creation, all the grading, all the lectures, all the transcription. It keeps all of that. But wait, there's more. Because Khan Academy automates so much of the process of math instruction, no resources are wasted grading homework assignments or lecturing, and feedback is also provided digitally and instantaneously. The teacher is liberated in much the same way as the student to approach teaching as a living craft with the resultant motivational drive toward mastery. Khan Academy system presents a solid learning system that turns mathematics into a daily exercise of dedicated practice. And while there are some that would scoff at the idea of learning is hard in the same way as basketball practice, Khan himself appreciated the physical changes that take place in the brain as a result of learning, noting proteins are synthesized, synapses are enhanced. There's a lot of chemical and electrical work going on, and this is why thinking actually burns a lot of calories. A good session of dedicated practice, what we call learning, especially in mathematics on this level, is exhausting, just like sports and exercise. And when your student gets into it, you're going to turn into a coach helping them fight that exhaustion. With this in mind, and given the support of Khan Academy's adaptive learning software, the teacher moves from the head of the class to the sidelines where they become a coach. A coach manages athletes on levels beyond just physical to include the psychological and social to help individuals and teams achieve their best performance. You want Khan Academy will turn it from holding a whip, getting your kid to do their math, to, cheering them on, helping them reach peak performance. It's a very vivid change. It's a polar opposite effect. As a coach and supporter rather than a bottleneck for the flow of learning, a teacher can leverage their resources, such as data and graphs on performance and targeted face-to-face support, to tackle the more challenging, or as Khan describes them, the higher tasks of mentoring, inspiring, and providing perspective that not only improve student productivity and performance, but provide even greater rewards, such as the development of a love of mathematics. Imagine if your student loved mathematics and learned it well, how powerful they would become, what amazing structures they could learn to build in their mind using these amazing mathematical principles, living mathematics. Khan Academy can help you bring math to life. So go ahead. At the end of the show notes, there's a link where you can sign up for your account and get started right now.